Suffer the little creatures, for they may yet rise up and beat you senseless. Druid's Call.
Get on with the squirrel jokes!
Squirrel jokes! Squirrel jokes!
How's it going, everyone? My name is Josh from Elder Drunken Highlander, and this is our deck tech video for Toski, Bearer of Secrets, a high-power combat heavy tempo deck that draws a lot of cards and tries to attack each turn. We are also trying something new with this deck tech, and we'll be posting a poll on our subreddit to name this deck. So if you want a hand in figuring out the deck name for this build, you should go vote there. The options we came up with for the names are on your screen right now. Toski, Bearer of Secrets is a new squirrel legend from Kaldheim based on the Norse mythological figure of Ratatasker. Ratatasker is an obnoxious, immortal squirrel who spends the majority of his existence trolling the ever-loving crap out of this great eagle and a big-ass snake. We love Ratatasker, and we couldn't resist making a deck around Toski when he got spoiled. Toski himself is 3 colorless and 1 green for a 1/1 legendary squirrel. He is indestructible, attacks each combat if able, and has the ability, whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. First of all, this card's flavor is on point. The little fucker attacks each turn because he just can't resist antagonizing our opponents. Also, he's hard to kill, so he can be eternally annoying. Plus, his card draw ability lets us fuel our other annoying little evasive dongers, so we can keep our hand full and our board fuller. Closest approximation to this deck out there would be an Edric or Tinma tempo deck, and those decks are the deck lists that Kevin, Austin, and I all look to emulate when creating this list together. Before we get into this video though, I just want to take literally 30 seconds to plug our Discord. If you enjoy building weird or janky decks, or even if you just want to show off stuff you've already made, it's a great place to come share ideas. We also have webcam game nights from time to time, so if you're interested in playing some EDH online in a more intimate setting than the mosh pit that is Play EDH, you should check out the link in the description. Alright, now back to the deck tech. Look to keep opening hands that present some early ramps so you can power out Toski as early as possible. Access to the squirrel in the early game is imperative. Also, seek to jam out some low CMC evasive creatures. We have a plethora of 1-mana dongers in the deck, so the odds of finding one in your opener are great. There are a few flyers, or pseudo-flyers, some creatures with land walk abilities, and some death touch dudes as well. Odds are our opponents would rather take one than lose a creature. Additionally, in more interactive pods, you may also want to mulligan for some protection to keep your squirrel on the board. Decks with access to exile, bounce, or toughness drain can still kill our squirrely boy, and auras such as Kenrith's transformation, along with theft effects like Gilded Drake, can also completely turn our deck off. So make sure you squirrel away some protection for occasions such as those. Once you have your first turn smoothed out, you want to look to plop down Squedric, Spymaster of Nest on turn 2 or 3 and start drawing cards immediately. Bop in on people for a few points of damage each turn and keep your hand full to interact. It should be fairly easy to get your tempo engine running, and keeping it going isn't too hard either. Simply keep a few creatures in reserve that you can slap down after a wipe, and have some protection spells on hand. An important thing to remember for this deck is to attack first. In nearly every situation, it is best to see what cards you draw before you play anything. It would really suck if you played your Forest for turn and then drew a Gaia's Cradle. Attacking first allows you to see all your options before making decisions, and it also lets you leave mana open during the attack step in case you need to respond with a timely Veil of Summer or heroic intervention. It also makes your opponent's blocks more difficult to decide. They may think twice about throwing a creature in front of Toski if there's a chance that you could pump him. Attacking and drawing cards is all good, but how do we win? Well, there are a number of options. Other similarly tempo combat focused weenie decks have some pretty obvious options to close out the game. Edric, for example, has access to extra turns. Tymna Hate Bear decks have access to a number of efficient combos. Even Najeela has, well, Najeela. This deck, however, needs a way to close out the game with combat damage, and it doesn't have the advantage of having access to colors like blue or black. Austin, Kevin, and I deliberated for a while on how to close games with this deck. Initially, we had settled on Craterhoof Behemoth strategies as a way to blow people out. We moved away from those as we found that the hoof was awful to draw and could be a temperamental win condition at best. We also looked at overrun effects such as Triumph of the Hordes and Return of the Wildspeaker, but determined those to be too fragile for a build like this. We even decided against anthems, such as Beastmaster Ascension, as they are pretty much useless in the early game where it is crucial for us to be setting tempo. For our path to victory, we've decided on creatures we would be playing anyways that can buff our team using their secondary abilities. Cards like Jolriel, Allosaurus Shepherd, and Tendershoot Dryad are all cards we can use to push into the red zone. Other cards in this vein we looked at, but ultimately decided to skip, are Kamal Fist of Kroza, Cultivator of Blades, and Signal Pest. Using these creatures or others like them, we can buff our team and eliminate the players we have been chipping at all game. As for weaknesses, we need to be aware of white, blue, and black players who use that removal that can circumvent our indestructible commander. We also need to be aware of board wipes. Even if our general is hard to kill, our other creatures are not, and cards like Creeping Renaissance can only do so much. Also, prison decks can be a nightmare for us, so if we are against them, we need to focus our removal on their defensive permanence. Lastly, Super Friends decks can give us trouble as well, as we have to split our attacks between drawing cards and killing walkers, which kinda feels bad. Notable inclusions. These are the 5 groups of cards I think are pretty nuts in this deck. 1 mana Death Touchers. Really, this deck is just a love letter to Sedge Scorpion. We love that Toski turns our Tajuru Brightblade into an Oakheim adversary. We went with these guys over the 1 mana Forest Walkers because we didn't want to run into a game with no green decks and a bunch of vanilla 1/1s. Oran Frostfang. Oh hey, a second copy of Toski. Neat. This one makes us hard to block too. Jolriel Monwali Recluse. She makes dudes and can win it for us. Her draw synergies go really well with Toski. She's also our strongest win con. Sometimes people forget that she's on the board and they end up taking like 21 when they meant to only take 3. Tendershoot Dryad. There are very few Timmy creatures I would say can truly win a game on their own. This is one of them. Creating this many tokens is massive advantage, and buffing them is both achievable and powerful. Words of Wilding. Okay, so full disclosure, Kevin and Austin told me not to include this card in the deck. I waited a few days until they stopped looking at the deck list, and then I added it anyways. Your card evaluation can't keep me away from my bears, you filthy spikes. They said, why pay mana to not draw a card? But the way I see it, like 35 of the cards in our deck are basically just vanilla creatures that 1 mana draw a card is what they do. So why not pay 1 mana for a 2/2? It seems like a pretty good rate. Why draw a card and maybe get a creature when you could pay less than that or equal to the casting cost of a creature and guarantee a hit it instead? I get it, you want to draw the cards instead of getting a 1 mana creature. That card could be anything. It could even be a 1 mana creature. Personally, I'll take the bear. This card also prevents us from drawing out, which is good because Toski is not a May effect. Notable exclusions. These cards are ones we are still considering, or just barely didn't make the cut. You may want to include them in your version of this deck. Craterhoof and Friends. I already went over this briefly earlier in the video. In addition to the reasons listed there are also quite a few cards we would have to add alongside the hoof, such as Natural Order, Eldritch Evolution, Magus of the Order, and Temur Sabertooth. These cards don't really help our game plan outside the hoof. Triumph of the Hordes. This card is straight up overrated. I think Overcome is usually better for a number of reasons that I won't go over in this video. We don't even run Overcome. Bear Umbra / Sword of Feast and Famine. They seem really good at first evaluation, but in practice they just turned out to be win harder cards. I would rather have cards that are good at all stages of the game and not just when I'm drawing 6 cards a turn off Toski. The protections are also a little redundant with Toski's own ability. Druid's Repository falls into this category too. Keen Sense, Snake Umbra. The one card is cute on Toski, but he himself doesn't have evasion, so it's not guaranteed. We may as well just run another creature. Same goes for equipment with similar effects. Squirrel Tribal. Even though there are a lot of good Squirrel and Anthem effects, we thought the synergies they bring aren't quite as strong as having some generically good cheap attackers with Toski, similar to an Edric deck. If you want some more cute interactions, pun intended, then maybe add some squirrely boys. Power level. This is a high-powered, tuned high-power deck. We don't think Toski can cut it as a CEDH commander, but this deck is about as close as he can get. The list could likely be powered up ever so slightly more if you remove stuff like Words of Wilding, alright fine, for more interaction. But even then, there are so many mono green lists that are better than this one out there, so there isn't really much reason to run this over like Isan, Marwyn, Yeva, the other established mono green competitive commanders. I think Toski has a home in higher powered to casual tables where its non-infinite beatdown game plan can be best utilized. Plus, the lower the power level you get, the more you get to play squirrels, which is really what we all want to be doing with Toski anyway. Overall, Toski is a fast, efficient, tempo-based mono-green aggro deck that seeks to win by attacking with buffed-up weenie creatures. We can draw oodles of cards every turn and have a litany of cheap 1-mana dongers to keep our hand full. Toski himself is a resilient and powerful creature and will likely stick around for the majority of the game. This makes the deck one of the most consistent aggro decks we've ever seen. If you've enjoyed the video and want to see more like it, hit that bell icon, subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a comment. Last time I made a remark about how around 80% of our viewers on some videos aren't subscribed. While we have made some progress, we are still rather close to that mark, so if you enjoyed the video enough to make it this far, please consider hitting that subscribe button. You can also check out our social media link below. We really appreciate your viewership, and we'll see you next time.